I'm Marian Blake, and I need you to hear this before it happens to someone you love. At 69, I thought $5 billion would buy peace, not paint a target on my back. After my husband's death, my own daughter and her husband planned a relaxing weekend in the North Carolina mountains. I thought it was comfort. It was a setup, one that left me strapped in my SUV on a cliff's edge, fighting for my life and uncovering a crime far bigger than family betrayal. My name is Marian Blake. I am 69 years old, and only 3 months have passed since I buried my husband, Robert. Grief still sits in my chest like a stone, yet the world insists on moving forward. Robert left me not just memories, but nearly $5 billion, a sum so staggering it felt unreal. People think money brings safety, comfort, freedom. I thought so too. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a modest brick house with roses Robert planted the summer before his illness. My days had always been simple: coffee on the porch, afternoons in the library, evenings with a book whose pages smelled of old paper. I dreamed of quiet travels, of Italy's hills, of giving my time to the community. Never once did I imagine this inheritance would turn my life into something else entirely. That instead of peace, it would make me a target. I noticed the change the week after the funeral, as if someone had flicked a switch inside my daughter. Caroline, who usually texted in clipped lines and forgot birthdays, began calling every morning at 8:15. "Did you sleep? Did you eat? Do you need me to come by?" Her husband, Brent, chimed in with cheerful messages about lawn care and vitamins. They arrived with groceries I hadn't asked for, straightened already straight pillows, and stood at my kitchen counter like 2 flight attendants who had forgotten where the plane was going but were determined to smile through it. At first, I told myself it was grief working strangely on all of us. Robert had adored them both, and perhaps they were trying to fill his absence with usefulness. But attention can be a spotlight and a cage. After the 3rd day of identical soups and repeated questions, "Where's your spare key? Who else has a code to the alarm?" I began writing their questions down in a notebook, a lifelong habit of mine. It calms me, the scratch of pen on paper. Lists make shadows behave. On Friday, Caroline came alone, hair damp from rain, cheeks pink, energy wound tight. She hugged me for a long time, longer than usual, then held my face in both hands. "Mom, I can't stand seeing you here with all the memories," she said. "It's not healthy." She slid a glossy brochure from her tote. On the cover, a lake like a coin of blue glass, cradled by mountains. "We renovated the cottage. Remember the one we rented by Arrowhead Lake? Brent finished the deck and added grab rails. We want you to stay there this weekend. Just air out your mind. No news, no phone, no workmen, no lawyers. We'll handle everything." Her certainty made me feel both cared for and managed. "It's kind," I said, "but I have the accountant on Monday, and the garden." "We'll water," she said quickly. "Brent bought timers. And I'll drive you up myself tomorrow afternoon." We stocked the kitchen. "I even washed the quilt you like." She was saying all the right words. Still, a small thread pulled in my chest. Robert used to warn me about decisions made for my comfort without my consent. "Kindness has edges," he'd say. I tucked the brochure beneath my notebook. "Tomorrow, then." That night I walked the house, touching the backs of chairs, the mantel, the frame of our wedding photo. Asheville hummed softly outside, the passing rumble of a truck, a neighbor's wind chimes. I tried to imagine the lake air and its good silence, the way water makes grief sound less like thunder and more like rain. When sleep came, it was thin. Saturday opened mild and bright. Caroline arrived before noon, full of lilting talk. She wore hiking boots she never hiked in and carried a canvas bag that clinked when it moved. "Tea," she said, reading my look. "And honey. The good kind." Brent texted from home base, as he called their townhouse. Pictures arrived. My porch light replaced, my mail gathered, the name of a tree service he'd lined up for that leaning maple. It's strange how helpfulness can feel like a net. The drive up the mountain threaded us through tunnels of rhododendron, past overlooks where the world fell away into green. Caroline narrated like a tour guide. "They're paving the outer loop. There's a new market in town. Oh, we should try the cider place on the way back." She laughed a half-beat too late at her own jokes. I watched her hands on the wheel, steady, practiced, and remembered the girl who failed her first driving test because she cried when the examiner raised his voice. My daughter had grown teeth, and I had missed when it happened. We reached the lake near dusk. The cottage crouched where the pines opened, weathered boards silvered by years, the new deck a clean, pale grin. Inside smelled of lemon oil and new paint. There were flowers on the table, a fat loaf of bread, a note in Brent's blocky script. Rest. Reset. We love you. The refrigerator hummed contentment. The windows framed water. Everything whispered, see? Safe. Caroline fussed with the thermostat, the curtains, the kettle. I'll start a fire, she said, kneeling at the hearth like a child playing camp. You sit. I'll make tea. I can help, I offered. Sit, she repeated, brighter, gentle steel beneath. She moved around the kitchen like she lived there, opening drawers with certainty, spoons, matches, mugs. The canvas bag from earlier sat by her feet. When she thought I wasn't looking, she nudged it with the side of her shoe farther under the counter, the way one hides wrapping paper from a birthday child. I lowered myself into Robert's old chair, the twin to the one at home, stunned by the tenderness of that small recognition, and by the ache that followed it. You thought of everything, I said. That's the plan, she answered, back to me, voice light. We're your team now. Outside, the lake darkened to pewter. A loon called from somewhere far off, a note so lonely it pierced me. Fire took to the logs with a sigh, shadows climbed the walls like dancers. I should have felt comfort. Instead, my mind tugged at details. The grab rails Brent had installed on a single step I could take blindfolded. The second set of keys Caroline insisted on keeping. For emergencies, the way she had steered my suitcase from my hand at the door, saying, let me. On the mantel stood a photo I didn't recognize, me between Caroline and Brent on our last 4th of July, sparklers hissing, my face turned toward them, laughing. Someone had framed the moment without telling me. I couldn't decide if that was love or choreography. Milk? Caroline called. Or lemon? Plain, I said. Just hot. She brought the tray in, mugs, napkins, a small jar of honey with a wooden dipper, the civilized pageant of care. She set it on the low table and sat cross-legged on the rug, close to my knees, studying me the way mothers study children. What are you thinking? She asked. That you've grown, I said. And that I'm slow to catch up. Her eyes softened. Then let us carry you a little, Mom. We drank in companionable quiet. The tea was floral, not my usual, but pleasant enough. Caroline watched me swallow, then looked away too quickly, as if embarrassed by her own attention. We'll head back early tomorrow, she said. Brent's got a guy coming to check your alarm. Just routine. I nodded, and the thread in my chest pulled tighter. I thought of my notebook on the kitchen counter at home, its neat columns of questions. I thought of Robert's voice, kindness has edges. I thought of the water outside, black as polished stone, and the new deck with its immaculate rail. When Caroline rose to clear the cups, she touched my shoulder. Sleep, she whispered. You're safe here. I smiled because that is what mothers do. But as the door to the kitchen swung shut and the fire cracked softly, I realized that safety, like wealth, is a word people use when they want you to stop asking why. The rain came suddenly, the way it does in the mountains, thick, silver sheets falling as if someone had tipped a bucket over the sky. By nightfall, the cottage groaned under the storm. The fire sputtered, shadows leapt and shrank. Caroline suggested one more cup of tea before bed. I watched her hands as she stirred the pot. They were too deliberate. The spoon clinked softly, evenly, like the tick of a metronome. She set the mug in front of me with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Drink, she urged. I lifted it, inhaled. Something faint, sharp, bitter. Not the lavender blend she'd shown me earlier. My tongue touched the surface, just enough to taste. The aftertaste clung like metal. She looked away, too quickly. I sipped again, feigning normalcy, then placed the cup carefully on the table. My body felt sluggish, as though the storm outside had seeped into my blood. Caroline spoke of small things, weather, groceries, my garden, but her words seemed to blur, swimming in the air. Mom? Her voice bent with feigned concern. You're pale. Let me help you upstairs. The floor shifted beneath me. My knees buckled. She caught my arm with surprising strength. Then blackness. When I woke, the world smelled of gasoline and pine. A low rumble hummed through me. I opened my eyes. Seatbelts strapped me tight across the chest. My SUV. The driver's seat empty. The engine alive. Outside the windshield, darkness pressed close. The edge of a gravel road fell away into nothingness. Fog clung to the trees. I twisted, panicked, the belt cutting my shoulder. Brent's heavy boots had left a trail in the mud, but already rain blurred them to smudges. He was gone. Then a glow, Caroline's phone flashlight, a weak white circle trembling in the night. She stood a few yards behind the car, rain slicking her hair to her face. "Mom," she called, voice shaking. "It's better this way. Better this way." I tried to shout, but my throat burned raw. Her hand moved, something small and black in it. A click. The sound of gears releasing. My heart leapt to my throat. The SUV lurched. Tires spun on wet gravel. The seatbelt cut into my chest as the vehicle rolled forward. Ahead, the road ended. I thought of Robert, of our roses, of the quiet mornings I still craved. I thought of the word safe, how she had whispered it, how false it tasted now. The SUV gathered speed, sliding toward the edge. Then, impact. A crash, a jolt that threw me sideways. The world turned over and over, metal screaming, glass bursting. My body slammed against the restraints, pain flaring everywhere. And then stillness. I opened my eyes to broken glass glittering like ice across the dash. My ears rang. The SUV lay at a tilt, cradled against a massive fallen tree. Inches ahead, empty space yawned, black and bottomless. I fumbled with the seatbelt, fingers slick with blood. It released. Crawling through shards, I dragged myself out into the rain. The forest roared with water and wind. Every step stabbed, but I moved, stumbling, slipping, until a porch light glowed faintly through the storm. I collapsed against the door, pounding weakly. It opened. "Dear Lord," Ruth Ellis gasped. Her hair was tied back, her nightgown covered by a thick robe. My neighbor, my friend. Retired nurse. Her arms were steady as she caught me. "Marion, what happened?" Words failed. Tears, blood, rain. She guided me to her sofa, wrapped me in blankets, pressed warm towels against cuts. Her hands were firm, practiced. When I could finally speak, I whispered, "Caroline." "Brent, they tried?" My voice broke. Ruth's eyes hardened. "Then we don't go to the sheriff." "Not yet. I know someone." She reached for her phone and dialed. A man answered quickly. His voice was low, controlled. "Mark Danner," she said. "Private investigator. I trust him with my life." I closed my eyes, trembling. Betrayal cut deeper than any wound. My own daughter. My own blood. And Brent, the man Robert once called, steady as oak. Ruth squeezed my hand. "They won't get away with this, Marion. We'll find the truth. We'll stop them." The storm outside raged on, but for the first time since Robert's funeral, I felt something other than grief. I felt the spark of fight. Ruth didn't sleep. She cleaned the blood from my hair, taped a butterfly bandage above my eyebrow, and made oatmeal I could barely swallow. At dawn the storm thinned to a gray mist. She set a mug of coffee in front of me and said, "Mark's on his way. Tell him everything, even the parts that sound unbelievable. Unbelievable is his business." He arrived with the weather still in his coat, tall, mid-40s, an X-something by the way he moved. He took in the splintered knuckles, the glass cuts, the tremor I couldn't hide. "No pity, just attention." "Ms. Blake," he said, voice steady. "I'm glad you're alive. Start at the cottage." I told him. The tea. The taste. The lurch of the SUV. Caroline's flashlight, that soft sentence, "It's better this way." When I finished, my voice sounded like it had been dragged over gravel. He set a small recorder on the table. "I need a formal statement for the timeline. Then I want your permission to pull camera feeds, traffic cams on the mountain road, any doorbells near the cottage, and your home system." My home system? I stared at the mug. Brent said a guy was coming to check the alarm tomorrow. Mark gave a small, humorless smile. "If we're lucky, they were sloppy." Ruth folded her arms. "And if we're not? Then we prove intent another way." He glanced at my hands. "You good to sign releases?" I was. The pen felt heavier than it should, as if every stroke carried the weight of what I now knew. My daughter preferred a world where I did not exist. By mid-morning he was back, a laptop open on Ruth's dining table. "Your SUV left the cottage at 10:41 p.m., he said. A county cam caught it idling at the overlook at 10:56. No driver. The passenger shape matches your height. He tapped the trackpad. 2 minutes later, a man in a hooded jacket walks out of frame. Shoe print size appears to be 11. Brent's DMV lists an 11. Ruth muttered, "God help us." Mark kept going. "I pulled logs from your alarm vendor. Someone with a technician code accessed your panel yesterday at 8:12 a.m., before Caroline picked you up. They tested the panic button and disabled your exterior cameras for 4 hours." "Technician code?" I asked. "Outsourced contractors. Easy to bribe if you know which ones are behind on child support." He slid a tablet toward me. I also scraped the court's public filings. Brent has a civil suit pending from a failed development in 2022. 2 investors. Large sums. My stomach tightened. How large? 7 figures. He looked at me. Motives don't get cleaner than debt and access. Ruth leaned closer to the screen. "What about Caroline?" Mark hesitated. "That part gets worse." He opened a second window. 2 months ago she requested copies of your medical records from Mission Hospital. She told the clerk she had a durable power of attorney. "I never signed one," I said. "She had one with your signature." He brought up a scan. My name, correct address, a familiar loop in the M that made my throat close. Forged, but competent. I stared at the screen, dizzy with a particular kind of nausea, the kind that comes when reality rearranges itself and leaves no safe furniture to hold on to. Where do people learn to do this? The same places they learn to make it look normal. He clicked again. I traced payments from Brent's Shell LLC to a small firm in Charlotte, Keller and Ames. They specialize in guardianships and emergency conservatorships for impaired elders. They filed 3 petitions in the last year where the elder died during the process. He looked up. Accidents, each time. Falls, car incidents. Ruth's hand found my forearm. "Marion, I'm here," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of it. "What do we do next?" Mark's answer was exact. "We go forward and sideways. Forward means federal. Sideways means evidence you control." "Federal?" He nodded. "I've worked with an agent who's been following a multi-state pattern, doctors, lawyers, a few financial advisors, pressing families to declare parents incompetent, shuffling assets, and when things get complicated, accidents. If Caroline and Brent stepped into that current, they didn't design it. They joined it." The room seemed colder. "Call your agent," I said. He did. Her name was Cynthia Hale, voice brisk without being unkind. "Ms. Blake, I'm sorry you're part of this," she said when Mark patched me in. "But I'm relieved you survived. Survivors make cases." She told us to sit tight while she pulled threads. Bar association complaints, DIA flags on a particular prescribing physician, a funeral home in Tennessee that filed life insurance paperwork with startling speed. "Ms. Hale," I asked, "how do people like this sleep at night?" She paused. "They tell themselves the elderly are already on the way out, and they're just putting affairs in order. They call theft stewardship. They call murder mercy." Her tone softened. "I will not call it that." After the call, I felt the oddest clarity, a straight hallway where there had been fog. "Sideways, you said," I reminded Mark. "Evidence I control." He nodded. "Your house. Your files. Caroline doesn't know that we know. We'll get ahead." Ruth insisted on driving. The mountains wore their mourning after, branches down, ditches glossy with runoff. When we reached my street, everything looked offensively normal. The roses lifting clean faces, the porch swept, a new light bulb bright in daylight. I unlocked the door with hands that remembered better days. Inside, I saw their kindness everywhere. Labeled pantry jars, a basket of folded throws, a note on the fridge, "Hydrate, Mom." It made my teeth ache. Mark moved through rooms like a soft tide. "Any prescription meds?" he asked. "In the bathroom. I barely use them." He photographed bottles, lot numbers, labels. He dusted my door keypad and smiled when the powder bloomed. 4 digits pressed most in the last 24 hours. 1, 3, 5, 9. Caroline's birthday is May 13, 1989. Ruth murmured, "Lord have mercy." In my study, Mark paused at the desk. "What's in the safe?" "Robert's files. Our wills. The trust." He looked at me. "May I?" I spun the combination. When the door swung open, the first thing I noticed was the smell, paper and air. The second was wrongness. The binders moved, I said. Robert always aligned it with the edge. Mark slid gloves on and lifted the binder. Tucked beneath the original trust was a second set, same cover stock, same tabs. Inside, language that made my mouth go dry. A provision naming Caroline as successor trustee, in the event of Marian Blake's cognitive decline, dated 3 weeks ago. My signature, perfect as a stamp. 2 witnesses. Names I didn't know. Ruth whispered, "God forgive them." Mark's eyes stayed on the page. I recognize this notary. Shows up in 3 of the agent's other files. I felt the spark again, brighter now, feeding on each unveiled lie. They walked through my home, I said quietly, and practiced my disappearance. He closed the binder. Then we practice your return. He outlined the plan with careful patience. We would not confront, not yet. We would pull bank camera footage for the notary stamp logs, request IP data from the alarm vendor, and, with Agent Hale's direction, wire a space we could control. Ruth lifted her chin. My porch. No one suspects a retired nurse of anything but lemonade. I looked at her, this woman whose number I'd once called only for borrowed nutmeg, and saw a general. Will it hold? I asked Mark. It'll sing, he said. We don't need them to confess to intent. We need them to talk like people who think no one is listening. As he packed his case, I ran my fingertips over the edge of Robert's desk. You once told me, I said to the empty room, to him, that dignity is a door we open for ourselves. I straightened. Let's open it. That afternoon bled into evening as tasks stacked and clicked into place. Agent Hale sent a list of questions disguised as insurance follow-ups. Mark tuned small microphones to the particular hush of Ruth's porch. Ruth baked a pie for camouflage and set out 2 rocking chairs. I wrote in my notebook, names, dates, lies, and under it, 1 clean line, I am not done. Ruth's porch looked exactly as it always did, 2 rockers, a quilt thrown over the rail, a pie cooling on the table between us. What no one could see were the 3 pinhead mics Mark had tucked beneath the slats, the recorder nestled in the potted fern, and the silent signal he'd rigged to flash on his phone when a voice hit the right decibel. Ordinary is the best camouflage. Ruth and I just had to act ordinary. We didn't have to wait long. At 2:07, Caroline texted, "Insurance representative needs to verify a few items with you. Can Brent swing by with me?" I answered, on Ruth's porch. Come. It felt like writing with someone else's hand. Agent Hale had a team 2 streets over. Mark sat in Ruth's kitchen with headphones on, his jaw working at nothing. No improvisation, he'd said. Keep them talking about logistics. They'll brag. People who cheat systems think they invented them. Brent arrived first, damp hair, salesman smile. He kissed the air near my cheek. You look better, Marion. Fresh air suits you. Caroline followed, eyes glassy bright, voice pitched in concern. Mom, I've been sick with worry. Are you okay? I folded my hands around a mug. I'm taking calls about the estate, I said. Insurance says some things were unusual. Unusual? Brent perched on the rail, casual practiced. Like what? Hospital forms. A notary. The alarm inspection. I lifted my eyes to Caroline. I want to understand. She slid into the rocker opposite me. The chair creaked like a conscience. This is what we wanted, Mom. Clarity. Her smile trembled. We just need to stabilize things so you're safe. That's all we've ever wanted. Safe, I repeated. Like the cottage. For a heartbeat the porch held its breath. Brent's gaze flicked to Caroline. The cottage was for rest, he said. Everything else is you reading into. Ruth set the pie knife down harder than necessary. Do you take cream, Brent? He blinked. Sure. Caroline leaned forward, that old conspiratorial tilt. Look, she said, lower now, I know how this must feel. But you didn't drink much, right? You look fine. And nothing happened, so let's just not make it bigger. Make what bigger? My voice surprised me, mild, as if discussing weather. The altered trust? The forged power of attorney? Or the part where my car rolled toward a cliff with me belted inside? Color drained from her face, then flared back. Mom. Brent cut in, impatient. This is exactly why we needed the trust. You spiral. You catastrophize. The overlook is fenced, for God's sake. The SUV couldn't have. He stopped, too late. Ruth cocked her head. Couldn't have what? He exhaled, a small, ragged noise. Gone over. The Ferns recorder pulsed a steady green. In the kitchen, I imagined Mark's finger stabbing a silent button. Caroline switched tactics, palms up, soothing. Mom, please. We're on your side. We talked to a firm that manages complex estates. They said families who don't act early end up in court. Courts are cruel. We were trying to spare you. I lifted my mug, took a slow sip to steady my hands. Which firm? She hesitated. Keller and Ames. Ruth murmured, never heard of them. Brent smirked. You wouldn't. They keep things quiet. Discreet. Nobody ever has to. Explain an SUV by a cliff? I said softly. His eyes flashed. He leaned in, voice dropping to a bragging whisper that our microphones loved. No one will ever find that SUV by the cliff, Marion. The county'll chalk the skid to weather, the rest to age. Trust me, we've seen how these go. Silence held, full and awful. Even the birds seemed to pause. Caroline grasped my wrist, a practiced daughter's touch made monstrous by context. Mom, stop looking at me like that, she whispered. We were fixing a problem before it got worse. You don't see how people are circling you. Lawyers, charities, men who smell money. We were trying to protect what's left of our family. What's left? I repeated. You mean after I'm gone? She flinched. Don't say it like that. How should I say it? My voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. Say it the way your emails say it? Like an outcome? A process? Her hand fell away. Brent pushed off the rail and paced, adrenaline loosening his tongue. Everybody does this at your level, he said. Doctors certify. Lawyers file. Trustees manage. You travel. You don't worry. You think any boardroom fortune gets to 90 without a few contingencies? He laughed under his breath. You're sentimental, Marion. That's expensive. Ruth stood, slow, deliberate. I think you two should go. Caroline reached for me one last time, pleading. Mom, please. Don't bring outsiders into this. They'll twist it. They'll make you look confused. I met her eyes and saw the little girl who used to braid her doll's hair until the plastic creaked, the teenager who lied about a party and cried when she was caught, the woman who had just tried to erase me and call it care. Something in me steadied like a bone setting. I am not confused, I said. The screen door opened with a soft squeal. Mark stepped onto the porch, badge in one hand, phone in the other. Agent Hale followed, flanked by two plainclothes officers. The yard filled with quiet authority, no sirens, just purpose. Cynthia's gaze moved from Caroline to Brent, heartbeat calm. Brentley Cross? Caroline Cross? I'm Special Agent Cynthia Hale, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have some questions about forged instruments, wire fraud, and an attempted homicide. Her tone was almost conversational. We can do this here or downtown. Caroline's mouth opened, then closed. Brent took a step back, hit the rail, calculated, failed. This is insane, he said. You can't. Mark held up his phone and pressed play. Brent's voice spilled into the afternoon. No one will ever find that SUV by the cliff. Cynthia nodded. We can. The officers moved with professional kindness. No theatrics, just handcuffs, rights read clearly. Caroline started to cry, but there were no words inside it, only air and habit. Brent's jaw clenched until it shook. As they were led down the steps, my knees trembled. Ruth's hand slid warm around mine, anchoring me to the old wood beneath our feet, to the roses nodding in the gentle breeze, to the life I still owned. Cynthia turned to me. Ms. Blake, we'll need you at the field office for a recorded statement. After that, we'll coordinate protective measures. There are other names, doctors, a notary, an attorney. You did very well. Very well. The words brushed some place in me that had been starved. I nodded, and my voice, when it came, was steady. Let's finish it. Mark gathered the devices, each tiny piece of truth returning to his case. He paused, looked at me, and said what I didn't know I needed. You did not survive by chance, Marion. You survived because you paid attention. I looked at the spot where my daughter had been, at the street where the car waited, at Ruth's pie cooling between us, steam rising like a prayer. No, I said. I survived because a tree fell. Then I drew a breath that felt like the first honest one in months. And because I will not be the last voice in my own story. The first night after the arrests, I slept on Ruth's couch with a patrol car idling at the corner. Morning brought Agent Hale's knock, clean and businesslike. "We're serving warrants," she said, laying a folder on Ruth's table. "Your statement anchors probable cause. Today will move fast." It did. Before noon, Hale's team seized hard drives from Keller and Ames in Charlotte and boxes of client files from a suburban storage unit whose lease was paid in cash. A notary in Hendersonville, the one who'd stamped my forged signature, was found with a ledger that might as well have been a confession. Dates, initials, quiet payments recorded as mobile service. By dusk, a county medical examiner from 2 towns over had handed in his resignation and asked for counsel. The network wasn't a single conspiracy so much as a lattice. Favors for fees, signatures for silence, each piece flimsy on its own, formidable together. At the field office, I gave a longer statement, calm, detailed, handwritten in my careful script, the way Robert liked his records kept. Hale watched without hovering. When I finished, she slid a glass of water toward me. "You've been precise," she said. "Precision matters." Mark came in with photos. 2 more families, he said, tapping the images, women my age, eyes distant with the kind of grief that doesn't know where to land. Their husbands died, accidentally, last year. Same attorney retained for probate. Same funeral director. One had a niece who raised questions. She was painted as unstable, then shut out. I pressed my hand to my throat. I could feel the heat that fear makes, followed by a cooler current, purpose. "Tell them they're not alone," I said. "Tell them to come." The indictments came faster than anyone expected. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Forgery. Racketeering. Attempted murder for Brent and Caroline. The funeral director, with a practiced sorrow and a very clean office, turned first, bartering cooperation for leniency. He gave up the banker who expedited transfers, who gave up the firm's consultant, a euphemism for the man who found helpful doctors and salespeople willing to facilitate elder transitions. Every antiseptic phrase became a brick in Hale's case. My house, once a museum of kindness, became a war room. Ruth ran logistics with a nurse's clarity, appointment times, a whiteboard of names, a tray of sandwiches no one finished. Mark parked himself at my dining table, entangling shell companies and mapping cash flows. I cooked when I could stand, because soup has its own language and everyone needed something warm they didn't have to explain. Caroline's attorney requested a meeting. Against advice, I agreed to sit in. She arrived anxious and lacquered, a woman built from apologies and hairspray. Brent looked smaller without his self-invented charm. The cuffs had taken some scaffolding with them. "Plea," the lawyer said crisply. "If Ms. Blake acknowledges diminished capacity at the time of the alleged incident, my clients will." "No," I said. 1 syllable, clean. My mind was clear. My mothering was clouded. For the first time, Caroline looked straight at me without a mask. "What did you expect me to do?" she said, raw. "Everything is about you. The money would outlive you. We were drowning. You wouldn't even notice." "I noticed," I said. "You wanted me gone because I saw you." Her mouth trembled, then hardened into something I didn't recognize. "I hope you enjoy being the hero," she said. "You always did like a story with you in the center." "Careful," her attorney hissed, pulling her back. The DA moved quickly to trial on the strongest counts. Hale's agent sat me down beforehand and walked me through the choreography. Where to look, when to answer, how to hold a timeline in my head when the defense tried to blur it. "Truth won't defend itself," Hale said. "You have to carry it. Courtrooms have their own weather, air-conditioned chill, fluorescent noon." I wore the suit Robert bought me for our 40th anniversary, not because I needed armor but because I wanted steadiness. The prosecutor's opening was spare: a widow, a fortune, a plan dressed up as care. He let the exhibits speak: photos of the overlook, the fallen tree that had saved me, the alarm logs with the technician code, my signature beside the notary's, my real signature on my passport for contrast. Then came the audio. Ruth's porch filled the courtroom. Brent's voice, the lazy brag: "No one will ever find that SUV by the cliff." The words slowed the room, pressed breath from throats. Jurors looked at him not with shock but with recognition, that tone of a man who has gotten away with small things so long he mistakes luck for skill. The defense tried its tricks. The tea was an herbal blend. The overlook, well marked, the SUV, prone to rolling. My memory, imperfect due to grief. But grief had not softened my notes. I had dates, times, details that sat in the mind the way a nail sits in wood. When the defense asked why I hadn't called the sheriff first, I said, because the first time I chose someone official, he married my daughter. A small sound rippled through the benches, half laugh, half gasp. The judge tapped his pen, hiding a smile he shouldn't have shown. On the third day, Hale took the stand. Methodical, she laid the network bare. The notary's ledger. The funeral director's cooperation. The banker's emails with subject lines like, expedite. The firm's internal memos on, elder stewardship protocols. Innocent words performing criminal labor. When the defense suggested the pattern was coincidence, Hale named dates until coincidence ran out of ink. Verdict day felt like standing on a dock in fog, waiting for a horn. The jury filed in, faces composed in the way of people burdened by power they didn't ask for. Guilty on attempted murder. Guilty on multiple counts of fraud and forgery. Guilty on racketeering for the outer circle, reduced for those who turned early. Caroline didn't look at me when they remanded her. I looked anyway, not to gloat but to bear witness. Brent stared somewhere past the ceiling as if a different world might descend if he willed it. It didn't. Sentencing came with its own strange mercy. The judge, a woman with deep lines and a voice like a cedar floorboard, spoke of betrayal as a civic crime as much as a private one. You injured more than a mother, she said. You injured trust itself. She handed down years that sounded long and still, to me, too short. After, the hallway filled with faces, the two widows from Mark's photos, a man who had been written out of his own father's end-of-life decisions, a nurse who'd seen a pattern and finally had a place to say it. We stood in a cluster of quiet people and let our shoulders drop, just a little. Hale shook my hand and said, "You changed the odds for strangers." Mark squeezed Ruth's shoulder and said, "And you, General, baked like it was strategy." Ruth laughed for the first time in days and said, "Pie is strategy." The papers called me heiress and victim and unlikely catalyst. Those are inaccurate, and I've learned to live with inaccurate labels. When strangers stopped me in the grocery store, they didn't ask about money. They asked, "How did you keep your head?" I told them the truth. I wrote things down. I believed the small wrong feelings. I remembered that love without respect is just hunger. Weeks later, in a small room at a credit union that still knows its customers by name, I signed the founding documents for Haven House. Our mission is narrow and fierce: help seniors contest fraudulent guardianships, recover stolen assets, and install guardrails they own themselves. We've hired attorneys who understand dignity in plain language, investigators who know the difference between mess and malice, and a social worker who answers the phone like a neighbor. The first grant we issued went to the niece who'd been painted unstable. She is finishing law school now. I go to the office 3 days a week. On the others, I water Robert's roses and sit with coffee on the porch that is once again mine. Sometimes I drive to the overlook. The county cleared the fallen tree and put up a new sign. It says "Watch your step," as if life could be managed by caution alone. I stand at the rail and thank the anonymous wind that laid that tree across my path. People tell me I'm brave. I don't think so. I think I am ordinary, a woman who was loved, then left, then targeted, who refused to be erased by a plan written in polite legalese. Survival is not a headline. It's a habit. And dignity isn't a medal you're handed by a court, it's a door you keep opening, even when someone else has tried to nail it shut. Today, my life is quieter, though it will never be the same. I walk through my house knowing every corner holds both memory and survival. The betrayal of my daughter cut deeper than any wound, but the trial, the verdicts, and the dismantling of that network taught me something essential. Survival is not just about breathing. It's about standing up when someone has tried to bury you. That is why I founded Haven House, a place where seniors can fight back, reclaim what was stolen, and learn that they are not alone. Every case we take reminds me that what nearly destroyed me can now protect others. Robert used to say, "Dignity is the last inheritance we should ever surrender." I finally understand. Money may draw predators, but dignity, chosen, defended, shared, is untouchable. Tell me, have you or someone you love ever faced exploitation or betrayal? Share your story below, and don't forget to subscribe. Together, we turn survival into strength.